pushing the button. Oh.
I push the button.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
And we share. Ok.
Allora, dai che finalmente si parte.
Ci siamo, ci siamo.
Sì,
Ok.
sì. Allora, e siamo pronti a condividere con tutti. Mentre condivido, ragazzi, io ve lo dico già da subito, non fate i timidi stavolta, eh?
No, no, infatti.
Oggi non è proprio il momento di essere timidi. Abbiamo qui una vera leggenda, quindi vi vogliamo carichi con le domande. Perché
Mi raccomando, ragazzi.
Vi addosso David. Altrimenti vi sguinzaglio addosso David.
Esatto, mi prendi per le caviglie e mi usi come mazza chiodata.
E ti lancio, esatto.
Mi sembra giusto. Già 10 connessi, ragazzi.
Siamo già praticamente carichissimi. Abbiamo già 11 connessi, quindi direi che possiamo iniziare. So, Mark, we have 14 people connected, so we can start.
Perfect.
First of all, welcome everybody, guys. Tonight we are here, live stream with the legendary Mark Zonder. Mark, welcome on the drum team. We are really honored
welcome on board, man.
Stream. How are you, man?
Very good. Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be on and looking forward to this.
Yeah, yeah. Ragazzi, lo dico in italiano, però dirò anche in inglese. Mi raccomando, qualsiasi domanda, Mark è disponibile per rispondere. Guys, if you have a question for Mark, don't be shy, write, and we read the question for Mr. Zonder. So, David, go with the first question.
Okay. So, Mark, tell us about how you started playing drums and the drummers that influenced your style.
I started when I was 7. I had my first lessons. You know, when I was younger, it wasn't that there were so many drummers that was influencing my style. It was more of different styles of music that was played around the house. My parents played a lot of Motown, a lot of music like Tijuana Brass, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. Actually, when I first started studying, first couple of years were really heavy jazz. It wasn't rock, it was jazz. And, you know, that's where the whole traditional grip comes from, because I was taught very early on holding the stick in a traditional way. So it wasn't so many drummers when I was young. You know, the big thing when I was young compared to people today is I was on a practice pad in a snare drum for probably 4 years. We never really got to the whole drum set thing. A lot of it was the rudiments. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. As I got a little older, you know, different styles of music definitely influenced in what I gravitated toward. What's really interesting, I was never like a progressive fan. I was just like a hard rock guy, you know, Montrose. I mean, it's not really hard rock, but, you know, song guys like Peter Frampton, Fleetwood Mac, Boston, Blue Oyster Cult. I mean, there's a million of them, but I was never like that guy that would sit down and study like all the fusion and the jazz and that kind of stuff. I was more of a song rock guy. So when I was kind of branching off of that, what really made an impact on me early on was the first 3 Journey albums. That was Ensley Dunbar that was playing the drums. And it was kind of fusion, metal, rock kind of stuff. But I stole a lot of stuff from Ensley as far as, you know, the hi-hat, which was like a big thing to me. Always having the hi-hat going with your foot, no matter what you're doing, whether it's on the downbeat, the offbeat, or whatever you were doing. And I remember going to see them because I grew up in San Jose in the Bay Area. We'd go to San Francisco. It'd be in a very, very small club, probably held 50 people, really small club. And then I'll never forget seeing Journey with Ensley Dunbar playing traditional grip. First guy that I ever saw with the chinas upside down and just tearing it up. Just, you know, all 4 limbs going. Really made an impact on me that, hey, you got 4 limbs, you might as well use them. And I've seen over the year, there's a lot of guys, big guys, you know, small guys, whatever, just don't use that left foot. You know, hey, my left foot's for double bass and that's it. And to me, that's a really big shame, because to me, the hi-hat technically is the one instrument part of the drums that gives the most sound. You play it open, you play it closed, you can open, close it, you can play it on the top. I mean, a bass drum, okay, you can hit it hard, you can hit it soft. Okay, the snare drum, you can go for the rim shot, but the hi-hat, and I've always been fascinated with that, and always the independence with all four limbs. So when I was growing up, I was just listening to different kind of music and trying to practice things and sit there and play really simple beats, but then play with my hi-hat, like on the off beat, the on beat. I remember sitting there with the first Journey record with the turntable, trying to put the needle onto the song and play along to it, and those kind of things, and learn my parts. But I did have a lot of lessons when I was younger, but then it just turned into playing in a lot of bands.
Very good, very good.
So we have a beautiful comment from our friend Marcello. He's a drummer, and he wrote, "One of my best influence too, man. I am literally consumed by hearing, consuming and studying all Fate's World album with your art, in particular Parallels album."
Parallels was the record that I can probably say in my career, just because that, Fate's Warning was a much bigger band than Warlord, but Fate's Warning, that Parallels album should have changed all of our lives. I mean, it really should have changed our lives. That was, to me, a commercial. Why Queensryche and not Fate's Warning is the question. It's like, why them and not us? Eye to Eye, We Only Say Goodbye, Life in Still Water. I mean, that album is just phenomenal. I have the greatest memories of recording that with Terry Brown in Toronto at Metalworks, which was Triumph's studio. And they had a great drum tech named Silkatu, who tuned the drums and everything. And that record, I mean, even today, 30 years later, whatever it is, totally stands the test of time. It's a great, great record. So thank you very much. And I think that's a good record to be influenced by. I think there's a lot there. I think there's, a lot of playing that's, I don't want to say over the top, but there's a lot of playing, but at the same time, it's very song supportive. So I think I tried to prove on that. You can play supportive of a commercial hit song like an Eye to Eye, but you just don't have to play boom tap to make it work. So there's some stuff on that record to steal. I'll give you that. And, take everything you can. I stole from other people, so I'm flattered when people say that they stole from me. But I'll be honest, I stole it from someone else anyway. So, but yeah, no, that's thank you very much. That's a very nice compliment.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, because in my opinion, Parallels is perfect, because it has an amazing sound for drums and all the other instruments. Your drumming is incredible and so brilliant and original, and of course Ray sings amazing.
The thing about that record too that it kind of went under the radar, but maybe for the public, yes, maybe not drummers, but I was using the electronics, and nobody was using the electronics back then. That was kind of like my thing. I learned that because before I joined Fate's Warning. I'm not sure if you guys remember a band called Animotion. It's a new wave band, and they had a song called "You're My Obsession." It was new wave. There's no question, new wave, and big song. And I played with them. I played an all electronic kit. I learned all about sequencers. I learned all about the click track. I learned all about how everybody's kind of tied together electronically, and I used that when we went to Fate's Warning. When I went to Fate's Warning, we were always playing to a click track. I was using the electronics for the different sounds. I mean, Life in Still Waters, a great example. Road Goes On Forever is another example of me using the electronics and producing those sounds myself, because it's just something else that I could use to express myself. And as much as other guys brought that in a little bit, hard for me to say that I wasn't like the first guy that really brought it in and used it, effectively. In a band situation. But that was one of the big things. And, and I continue to this day. using that. It's just part of, you know, my sound, I guess you could say. You know, I think you play Life in Still Water and everybody kind of gets those samples and those China hits and the low notes. And I mean, the 11th hour, you know, all those bells and stuff, that's not real bells. Those are all samples, you know, the wind chime. So we can do it live, and we did it live for a long time, you know? So that was one of the big things that I always kind of prided myself on. You know, a lot of guys can play the drums, and that's great and that's cool. But I kind of brought the electronics in and tried to take it even further. I also think I brought the cowbell in a little bit more than a lot of people had been using the cowbell over the years. But I was a big fan of bringing the old cowbell in there. And, you know, like when you listen to songs like Monument, you know, you can hear it in the breakdown part and stuff like that. But no, I love that record. I thought that I have great memories of that record.
Yeah. Okay. So
some comments coming.
Yes, allora, Luigi wrote, "Hi guys, really amazing live." Francesco wrote, "I am not a drummer, I'm a singer, but you are my favorite drummer. Your sound is magic. I love the Fates Warning albums, but for me, you will be Thunderchild forever."
Oh no, I'll be Thunderchild forever. No, there's no doubt that. Very simply, that was the coulda, shoulda, woulda band for me of my whole career. To me, just the magic. I mean, you know, Bill never wrote or played a bad note in his life. The beautiful thing about Warlord is if you listen to every single Warlord song, there are not two songs that even sound remotely close to each other. Bill is brilliant songwriter. I mean, he's writing Lucifer's Hammer at 17 years old, you know. And then what's interesting about Lucifer's Hammer, well, two things about Warlord. Okay, well, Hammerfall obviously, you know, covers Child of the Damned, and Joachim's end of Hammerfall.
I have that CD. Very good.
Yeah, they covered it, and Joachim told me that, you know, Hammerfall came from the lyric line of "The hammer will fall on you" from Lucifer's Hammer from Warlord. Joachim was a big Warlord fan. So it's interesting how Bill had an effect on a lot of people. And yeah, Thunderchild, it's so funny because back in the day, you know, back in the 80s when this was happening, people were looking at us going, Thunderchild? Destroyer? Archangel? And it's funny because Bill had storylines and songs for each character. It could have been a movie, okay? But it's funny how it rolls out, and then you hear about bands now. Buckethead, you know, you have like bands with guys with like strange names, or even bands that, you know, they basically kind of stole that whole concept. But we used to get like so much criticism for that back then, but it was just Bill being ahead of his time. He was ahead of everybody. You know, I mean, he kind of like took the whole Kiss thing to a whole new level with serious, sophisticated music. I mean, we weren't going to come out on stage in makeup or anything like that, but each person in the band had a reason. There's a reason that the drummer's name is Thunderchild. The reason there's the guitar player who's playing these leads is Destroyer. I mean, there's certain, you know, and I mean, he was genius. That's the only word I can come up with is genius. It was just genius. You know, it's what he was doing, you know, what he does. So, but yeah, I'll be Thunderchild forever. It's cool. I'm with it. I like it.
Yeah.
It's very
Dai,
good.
ti vuoi leggere tu la domanda di Marcello?
Yeah. There's another question for you, Mark. What is your best experience on a recording session on your life generally? And what is your best experience session with Fates Warning who satisfied you totally?
Well, like we were just talking parallels, obviously the whole process of recording that. A Pleasant Shade of Gray, I loved that because we were also able to pull that off live. You know, I had the big rack of electronics, and we were able to create all those sounds. And kind of, you know, now everybody just pops open a laptop, and there you go, and you can do everything. I used to have a big rack, you know, had samplers and sequencers and mixers and power amps and speakers, and it was a big mess. But the fact that we were able to do that live way before computers and present that show exactly the way it was supposed to be, you know, was a big deal to me. You know, also, you know, Parallels was great, but recording and playing live A Pleasant Shade of Grey, you know, was simply, you know, crazy. Any of those shows, whether it was Greece, Italy, or even like Holland, at certain periods with Fates Warning were like just magical, you know, just crazy. You know, the fan participation, people got it, you know, they were there to see the band, and it was great. But yeah, there's a lot of great moments. There's not a lot of quote bad moments. I mean, it was kind of difficult in a career to be doing Parallels with such a great record. It's on the radio here, everything's great, and then your career just kind of comes to a grinding halt, and you can't even get a lunch with a record company to discuss another record because the style of music just so radically changed. I mean, picture it, you know, Fates Warning, we have our little collar shirts on or whatever the guys were wearing at the time, and then all of a sudden it turns into Nirvana where, oh, not taking a shower for a month is cool. Okay. Okay. You guys kind of sound like shit. But I guess that's what we're going for. Okay. God bless him, but the drummer can't play his way out of a paper bag, but it's cool because it hits really hard. It's kind of like, okay. Nobody in the band had tattoos. Nobody had dreadlocks, and everybody liked to keep themselves clean. So we were kind of out. We were out. And that's kind of what happened after Parallels. The Goo Goo Dolls went with Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers didn't pick up Fates Warning like they said that they were going to. After we sold, that was the deal with Metal Blade. You sell X amount of records, and that's when the whole Metal Blade Warner Brothers thing, you know, came apart, and we were kind of just left standing there. So that's the quote bad memory per se. But you know, obviously, you know, we did a few more records, or I did a few more records, and you know, things were cool. You know, A Pleasant Shade of Grey, though, I'll never forget. You know how that record has a lot of samples and programs and electronic stuff going on in the background? Well, I was at Jim's house in New Hampshire programming all that stuff up. And I'll never forget, this was way before computers, okay? So it's not like, oh, you should have just saved it. It was way before computers. And we spent like 8 hours. And I actually got up and knocked the power cord out of the wall. And it all just went, and we lost 8 hours of time. We had to start over again. So those are one of my memories that I'll never forget. All that work that we did, that, you know, and again, it wasn't the days of the computer where everything can be done and saved and backed up on a hard drive. This was old-fashioned sequencers, old-fashioned drum machines. I mean, I was using a very old drum machine that would trigger a certain pattern at a certain time. I had samples. So it was interesting, but no, great times with Fates Warning. Absolutely.
I personally love your drum work on Inside Out.
It's interesting because Inside Out could have been kind of Parallels Part 2. It kind of a progression from that, but the production isn't even close to what Parallels. The one thing that Inside Out kind of lacks is production. It's like when you listen to Monument, you know, such a great song, or Face the Fear, such great songs, but, or Outside Looking In, but the production is, some people mind, some people don't mind. Oh, it's a great song, I don't care. To us, it was like, ugh. It wasn't Terry Brown, you know, let's just put it that way. It wasn't the greatest production in the world, but yes, there's some great songs on that record. Great songs on that record.
It's a great album. I have the Japanese editions at home.
Cool. Yeah, that was a good record. I remember recording that. We actually did the drums at my studio in North Hollywood with Phil Magnotti. We brought in a 2-inch tape machine, and we were in my big room, and it was cool. It was good. I have good memories of that.
Okay, now I'm going to translate a wonderful comment from our friend Luca, a drummer from Rome. So Luca would like to thank you for living and for your amazing musical style. He said that you are one of the drummers that most influenced him, and he would like to ask you if Neil Peart and Stuart Copeland are two drummers that influence your style? Because when Luca hear your drumming, he hears something from these two drummers.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I didn't sit down and necessarily study either one. If I would have to put influences above that, to me are Steve Smith, Dave Garibaldi, Power of Power, Picaro, obviously, and guys, guys like Vinnie Colaiuta, that guys like Dennis Chambers, even guys. I wasn't influenced by guys, but guys like Carter Beauford, who plays with Dave Matthews, just like amazing drummers. Stuart Copeland, maybe. I mean, I didn't really sit down and study him. What I did do is I spent a lot of time with a teacher when we were in San Diego doing Afro-Cuban stuff. So it was Afro-Cuban from, and right over there, the congas, to, I learned how to really play the congas the right way, not just screwing around. And how to apply Afro-Cuban rhythms. And I have a couple books to apply to the drum set. So that's when you hear sometimes that reggae thing come out that I play sometimes, or some of those kind of things. It's not really Stuart Copeland. It's in that style, but I never really sat down and studied Stuart Copeland and stole his different things. There are some really common things that you always hear in that style of music. So yes, I did cop that. What I got from Neil Peart more than anything else was just the fact that, hey, you can kind of go out and play. You don't have to just sit back, and play kick and snare and do that. You can come out and play with the band, and it's okay. There's a time and a place for it. Obviously, you're playing in a serious commercial band, because I always joke and I say, well, what do you think Neil Peart would sound like playing with AC/DC? I don't know. I can't automatically say, oh, he'd sound great. I don't know. There's something about those drummers that play with AC/DC that it's nasty. It's simple, yes, but there's an attitude. I don't know if Neil has that attitude. Is Neil going to bust out the 2 Bs and just lay it down? I don't know. Obviously he played in the right band at the right time and he got to do his thing. But what I learned from him was that you can come out and play with the band, and whether it's playing in unison or playing something that complements what they're doing. And what I've heard over the years, is when I play, it sounds orchestrated. It sounds like I'm just not jamming. I'm building up to things and coming down on things and orchestrating and repeating patterns, because obviously that's what music, is supposed to be. The verses is supposed to be similar to each other. They can be different, but that's where you get creative. And I've always thought you can get creative within the simple groove where you don't have to play that, which you've never heard me do on a record. I've never done that. It's just it's like what everybody else does. So it's like, why do it? But there's ways to be creative inside what you're doing, even if you're playing simple. There's ways to do it. I've gotten really good at kind of turning that beat around a little bit and crashing on one with a snare and a crash instead of the traditional kick, which gives it a whole kind of different feeling. Now, some people, it really throws them off, but as long as the patterns are consistent, you're okay. There's just little ways to get around it. But from Neil, I definitely learned that fact, the idea of, like, we used to come home from high school and listen to All the World's a Stage and just hear the constant playing for the song. So I definitely got that kind of attitude, and like, oh, it's okay to go ahead and do that. So that's what I got from Neil more than studying and stealing his, quote, chops. The one I really stole the chops from was Dave Garibaldi from Tower of Power. He has a great book called Future Sounds, and his drumming is just so different than what everybody else is doing or was doing with the combinations of the hands and the stickings and the feet, the different things. I got into him really heavy and use a lot of that sticking even today in different contexts. And the reason I really get away with it is if I was playing in a band like Tower of Power, I wouldn't get away with it because people would go, oh man, you sound like Dave Garibaldi. What are you doing? You sound just like Dave. But since I play in different styles of music, I can apply that to that. And to most people, they're just going, man, that just sounds original. But to me, it's like, yeah, I kind of stole it from Dave Garibaldi and I kind of incorporated it into my style, which I guess is basically the epitome of being original. You're taking a little bit from all these different people and coming up with your own sound, you know? So, but that's kind of where it lies. I never really studied, you know, the Rush stuff. I mean, I listen to it and I know it, but I wasn't overly excited by that. You know, the Dave Garibaldi book is the one that really got me going.
Okay. The second part of the question from Luca is that with my band Still Seal, we recorded a cover of Lost and Lonely Days for a Warlord tribute CD. He would like to know if it's possible to send you a copy when they finish the work.
Sure.
Ok.
No.
Quindi Luca, gliela puoi mandare.
I understand tribute records. I mean, hell, Fate's Warning played on it was Scorpions. We did In Trance. We did the Rush thing with Closer to the Heart. We did Sabbath, Sign of the Southern Cross. I'm good. I understand it, especially if you can make some money at it, like if the label's paying you to do it. God bless. If you can make money in this business, go for it. But myself, I'd rather spend the time working on original stuff, working on myself. Yes, I know when you're younger, you're supposed to be playing covers. I know they say, okay, you play covers, you learn different things. I mean, when I was younger, I was playing UFO, Thin Lizzy. Who else we got back then? I mean, we were playing kind of, you know, Iron Maiden. We're playing obscure kind of bands. But, you know, if I was a drummer coming up today, I would worry more about specializing in what I do as compared to, and I know people have to make money, and I know this business is horrible, but it would be really hard pressed for me to play in a tribute band. I mean, it would, that's just my own personal opinion. And it's worked out for me in my life. But I think playing the drums to me, and I know it's about making money, but to me, I get more satisfaction out of improving myself and coming up with something cool. I mean, I could show you right now on my computer probably at least 250 minimum different grooves, because I'll just sit down, come up with a basic idea, find the click, find the tempo, and then come up with all these different patterns, record them. And then I send them to different people, but I have them here, and it's me, and it's like my stuff, and it's just making me mentally as a drummer go further and further and further as compared to sitting around and playing, you know, Journey songs. I get it, but for myself, it's not a big thing. I really wanted always to expand and be original, you know.
Cool. Well,
please
another
go.
question. Okay. Okay, we have another question from our friend Francesco. Which is your personal opinion about the future of heavy metal? I think that the quality of composition in these last 10 years is lower than the past. What do you think about it?
I would say 20 years. I would say 20 years. I don't want to sound like the old man, but music sucks today. I mean, I think it sucks. I mean, let's be honest. You know, go back a couple of years, and you're sitting here, and you think Greta Van Fleet is the new Iron Maiden or the new Led Zeppelin? Are you kidding me? I mean, no, it's horrible. You know, I've posted on my website several times. Go back and look at 1976, the records that were released in '76. I mean, there's hundreds of gold and platinum records that you go, oh my God, you know, these are incredible. Basically, I think what's happened is radio and the record labels have kind of killed the music business, okay? There's no more developing an artist. There's no more, hey, we know it's going to take a few years and a couple records to kind of get you guys going. It's so funny today, especially heavy metal, and I've been involved in it. You go and you have a project, and we can talk about the different things I have going on later, but I have a project. The first question is not, hey, what does the music sound like? Which I always thought should be the only question really that we should be talking about. What's the music? It's like, well, who's in the band and how many records have they sold? That's the first question. Because record companies now, there's no artist development. All they want to do, it's a product. Okay, you're going to give me a product, and I'm going to take it. I'm going to pay you $5, And my object is so I can go make $10. And if I make $10, maybe I'll come back to you and you can do a second record for $6, and maybe I can make $12. It's just a business. And it's just really sad that no one gets excited about music anymore. It's excited about the dollars. And that's just, it's a fact. It's money. You know, the record companies aren't in business anymore, especially with the whole thing with the streaming and all that kind of stuff, how the artist is completely getting killed, you know, and no one's buying CDs anymore and all that kind of stuff. It's a vicious circle. No one's buying a record. So a record company doesn't have money to give an artist to do a record properly. That's why so many records sound horrible. You know, whether they're drum machines, triggers, auto-tune, whatever the case may be, it's because they don't, a lot of people, I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I have it, you know, over the years I've put together the studio here, but a lot of people just don't have the right equipment to make proper records. And you want to know why the record sounds so sterile? And that kick drum is that same that you hear on every record. It's because no one has the money to go into a proper studio and kind of do it the way records are supposed to be made. That's why a lot of people think, you know, the older records have magic to them because there's something about it. There's, you know, it's not just sitting down and then getting on a computer and cutting things up and moving them in line so the kick drum falls on the one every time. It's not that, you know, there's a soul to it. So yeah, it's, I'm not sure where it's going, you know. I think, you know, unfortunately, and you've been seeing it, you know, people are getting older. So the people that are leading that charge for the last 30 or 40 years, it can only go on for so long. And, you know, the greatest bands in the world, I mean, how long, and God bless them, but, you know, how long can, you know, Deep Purple and Iron Maiden, just from an age factor, just from no one's 35 anymore, you know, and that was actually part of Neil's problem too. You know, it was hard for him to play because physically everybody's getting older, unfortunately, and the body breaks down. So I'm not sure. I don't, honestly, when I listen to stuff, I just go back in time. I mean, I know it's going to sound funny, but I spent, you know, the last 3 months just listening to Bad Company with Brian Howe, you know, after he passed away, and just totally immersing myself in those songs. And just because I like them, I don't sit down and analyze songs from a drum point of view. I mean, obviously I listen and I hear the drums, but I'm not that guy like charting it out. I just like music so I can move, you know, it moves me. I lose myself in it. You know, it's something that it's really hard to lose yourself in your own music, but it's really easy to do in someone else's music. You know, I've always wondered, you know, guys like, you know, Phil Ahart in Kansas, and even, you know, Steve Walsh, the singer, as much as you and I, and we sit around and we're in our heads going, you know, Carry On My Wayward Son, and it gives us this feeling, and we're, oh my God, this is the most amazing song. I wonder if the guys like who wrote it are like, oh my God, I don't want to hear that freaking song again. You know, it's like when you write the song and you have to play it all the time, it's different. So from an audience point of view, I'm just not sure, you know, where music is really going. You know, I don't see a lot of younger bands that are killing me. I'm not a big thrash guy, I guess you could say. I'm not a big heavy doom and gloom kind of rock guy. I just don't like it, you know. So I don't know. That's a good question, but I agree that it's been a complete downfall for, you know, 20 years easily to me. And again, you know, ask yourself, how many bands during that period came out and are still around? I mean, I don't know too many, you know. I mean, Iron Maiden was around in the 70s, so that, you forget them. You know, Deep Purple was around in the 60s, so forget them. But how many bands have really come out in the last 20 years that have stuck, you know, and really made an impact? You know, it's funny because you look around and you see Foreigner, Styx, REO Speedwagon still out there playing, you know, and here in America, especially, and Journey too, you know, they play to big crowds every night, you know, and and that's an earlier period. Now, when we're talking about that period where Matchbox 20, Counting Crows, Train, bands like that, do you really see them out playing? No. Do you see 10 years from now they're going to be doing reunion tours? No, because no one cares. You know, people care about Iron Maiden, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath. They care about those bands, and they always will. And that's why those bands, you know, can play today, well, not today because of COVID, but, you know, can play and draw those kind of people and have that kind of fan, because that music made an impact on people. Stuff over the last 20 years, I'm not sure if it made such an impact. You know?
Very good.
Okay. I have to go
Marcello.
back because we have too many comments. Okay, so
Bye.
we have another question from Marcello. Meanwhile, like a producer, what you like to hear by a drummer as a conception of arrangements of drum parts? I say everyone has a personal approach and this is cool, but I would like to know your personal vision of a drummer.
It starts with supporting everything. It starts with listening, which brings me kind of at an interesting point. A lot of drummers don't listen, and I didn't in the beginning. I have these. I hear an idea, like I hear a guitar riff, and I try to jam this great riff that I'm working on into it, trying to push it in there, and it doesn't really go too well. So if I step back and I really listen, I go, okay. On 1 and 2, he's going downstrokes, and on the and of 3, he's going an upstroke. So keep that in mind while you're playing and try to create your part that supports that. If you can start with supporting it, then you can go off of it and come back to the support. But you've got to, the first rule of playing the drums, you're a support instrument. So let's start there. You're supporting everything. What I really like is dynamics. I really like a drummer taking a point of view from kind of a producer's point of view, where, okay, the first verse, half of it, I'm just going to play the hi-hat and the kick just so it's subtle. So the vocal, and then I'll kick in. And when I hit that doom, doom, doom fill, everything comes up and you can feel the emotion. And that's what's missing in a lot of today's music. But anyways, the emotion comes in. Okay, the drummer has a way, if he knows what he's doing, how to dictate that emotion through the song, whether it's from laying back or kicking in kind of hard and pushing certain things on accents. You know, you also get into the manipulation of time. You know, yes, you're playing in 4/4 and it's straight time, but if I play a triplet fill here, it's going to sound kind of disjointed and land nicely, but it gives emotion to the listener. I like a drummer who's really clean. If it doesn't mean anything, don't play it, kind of thing. But when you are going to play something, really make it count, you know. But it is a support instrument, and I think a lot of drummers don't listen to what they're recording to. They just kind of got an idea and they're going along and they're playing. But the thing that I've done, I did it with the Slave Year record, and I also have it going on a project that I'm doing right now where everything starts with the drum beats. And what I do, like I said, I have hundreds and hundreds, and I come up with an idea and I send it to the keyboard player that I'm working with. He'll write something basic, and then when I hear it, then I'll go back and give him 4 other parts at the same tempo, whether it's a halftime feel or a double time feel or some other kind of crazy part, as long as the tempo is correct. And he puts together the right songs. I found that when you find the right guitar player or keyboard player, and they can take what you've done that's a little crazy and write to it, it's magical, because you don't have to force your little parts into everybody's song now. You based it off of my part, and so I'm getting my originality in there, and it's this very original song. I mean, there's a lot of times where I've done a kind of a reggae kind of thing. It's basically on the Slave Year record on a song called Dove, and it's kind of a reggae thing, but I've done that before, and I gave that to Viv, and he wrote something completely different for it. And we all of a sudden we have a completely different song, and then it goes to different directions. But when you start with the drum stuff, it's very satisfying that way for me as a drummer, because a lot of times, you know, me just shoving my part into some guitar part that goes dang, 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 dang. I mean, you can only do so much. But if I come in with a really cool groove oriented, you know, it's not crazy, it's not a solo. You can catch it. You know exactly where the groove is. It might be a little different, and I might have a cowbell with the left hand, but it's cool. And then any musician worth their salt should be able to hear that, groove to it, and then start coming up with an idea. And I've heard from a couple of people that they think it's the greatest thing in the world because it already sets them in a direction as a writer, as compared to how many guys do you know that, okay, dude, let me hear what you got. I don't know. I don't really have anything. I haven't really thought of anything. But you give them, it's like a great drum machine that they have, and they can put my groove on and come up with different ideas. It takes them to different places. It gives them ideas of where to go, because a lot of musicians and a lot of writers sometimes get blocked and have a very tough time, you know, okay, on your mark, get set, write me something. And everybody goes, I don't know. So it works out really well. If you find the right people, and I suggest it to every single drummer out there, if I can give every drummer one bit of advice, try finding somebody that you can write with and that you can give them your crazy patterns. I don't care if it's speed metal, you know, or jazz, but it's your original idea, and it's a little quirky and it's a little funny, and it's, you know, it's obviously got to be in tempo and it's got to be in time, and someone has to be able to understand it. But watch what happens when someone takes a drummer who's supposed to be the support guy, they take his idea and run with it. It's really satisfying. It's really satisfying as a drummer, instead of just being that guy back there waiting for the solo, you know, to play your stuff. So it works out really good. So I'm involved in a project now. Keyboard players in France, guitar players in Belgium, bass player is Philip Bino, a really good friend of mine who plays with Steve Vai, that played on the Warlord stuff. And as much as I can't say who the singer is, it's someone that I have played with before in the past. So it's interesting. It's a very interesting project. It's hard rock. It's kind of progressive. It's songs, but it's definitely me playing a lot of electronics incorporated within the acoustic kit as well. And it's special. It's definitely good. I'm very excited about it. So the next 6 months or so, we're going to roll out with something. We're in the middle of putting songs together right now. So it's good. But again, it goes back to that thing of like, it starts with the drums, you know, and I would suggest and advise everybody out there, you know, I don't care if you're recording it with just 2 small microphones in the room, but get it to somebody that you like to play with and see what they can write to it. It's quite the experience as a drummer, I'll have to tell you that.
Very good.
Thank you, Mark. Davide, vuoi tu la prossima, quella di Luigi?
Certo. Ok. Allora, the question is, I'm not a drummer, but Luigi supports drum team. He's a big friend of us. I'm not a drummer, but I knew Fates Warning. I know Fates Warning. Oh, è successo qualcosa. Telefono. Aspetta. Some technical problems. Oh, perso la cosa, perso.
Leggo io?
No, aspetta.
Ok.
Aspetta. Okay. I'm not a drummer, but I know Fates Warning, and I was very sad when Joe DiBiase and Aresti left the band. I was 10 or maybe 11 years old. I give all my respect to Mark.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Actually, I think the real story that people don't understand is the reason Joe and Frank left the band. It was, you know, they had families, you know, it was tough. You know, we weren't making money. I was lucky that I had, you know, my studio in Los Angeles, but not everybody was that fortunate. So a lot of other musicians as well had to kind of leave their bands because they couldn't dedicate that kind of time and leave for, you know, 6 weeks or whatever a tour would be, you know, that truthfully, you know, didn't make a lot of money. You know, it wasn't like life-changing money. So, you know, those guys made decisions that, you know, they had to kind of, you know, were family-based decisions. It wasn't like, oh, I hate you guys and I'm going to leave. It was, you know, it's financial and family-based, you know, which you have to respect.
Yeah. I totally understand. Okay, we have 2 comments from Daniele Caruso. He wrote, "Outside Looking In from Inside Out, one of the most amazing progressive album from Fates Warning." And then he wrote, "I saw Fates Warning in Rome in 1995 with Dream Theater, an amazing show."
I remember it. It was in a big basketball kind of. It was a big place, and
Yeah.
as I remember, it was very hot. I remember I It was very hot. I sweat a lot, but like I said, the Italian shows and the Greek shows, always spectacular. Whether it's Warlord, Fate's Warning, it's always really, really, really good. I remember those shows. We did a lot. We did a lot of touring with Dream Theater. You know, we did like 6 weeks in the United States, and then we'd go over to Europe for 6 weeks and do 6 weeks there. So we were on the road quite a bit.
Yeah, there's a fun story about the show in Rome in 1995, because the venue, the name is Palladium. I think that there were an overbooking with the tickets, because I have some friends of mine older than me that told me that they were stoked altogether because the venue was bigger, but there were too many people inside, because they are all excited for the Awake tour for Dream Theater, for the Fates Warning tour. So all the progressive metal fans from Rome and neighbors come to the same venue to see the show.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. Yeah, there was a lot of people.
Very good.
Ok, vai tu col commento di Brenchia?
Okay. He's talking about the show in 1995 in Rome,
Okay.
and he says 25 years later, I can understand the drum fill between hi-hat and ride on the 11th hour.
I think, yeah, the hi-hat's on the downbeat and the ride's on the offbeat. It's just 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. I mean, there's a couple little weird bar twists, as I remember, in there, but no, that's a real standard thing that I use all the time. It's instead of just playing some ride beat, it's let the hi-hat take every other beat, and it creates. And I kind of learned this from funk music and Dave Garibaldi and other things where, and I used to do this in my clinic all the time. Play a straight rock beat, like Living After Midnight. Just Living After Midnight. You play the hi-hat on all 4, and the ride cymbal is the bell. Okay, it's just 2 and 4. Okay, whatever, cool, rock beat. But the minute I take that hi-hat and put it on the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and all of a sudden you got this kind of fusion thing going on, because you got, but you're still playing that straight beat, but it sounds completely different. So that whole technique of what he's talking about is something that, you know, I talked about earlier too, that I use it all the time. And it's the slightest little thing that can just opens up your drumming vocabulary like crazy. The other thing that I love about always keeping my hi-hat going is whether I'm playing a fill or any kind of accents, it's always kind of a timekeeper there. So I know where I'm at. Am I rushing? Am I behind? Am I late? You know, and it's kind of like having your own personal metronome sitting there with you. So I'm a big fan of that. And if you watch me play, it's always going. It's always, I mean, if it's shut because my foot's on it. But if my foot's not on it, I make sure that it's involved somehow. Even if I'm playing it with my foot closed, when I go to play a fill, you'll see the hi-hat, you know, doing its thing. You know, it's just you know, something I've done for years. I think it's important. It's part of my sound, as like what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Riccardo, I think that if you want to see and understand better what Mark did on the 11th hour, check on YouTube the video with his drum clinic from Musician Institute, because you can see all the moves.
See it all there. Point of view in 11th hour. You're absolutely, yeah. I was trying to go through my head of like, okay, I know there's videos of 11th hour. You're right. That's the one. You can't miss it. It's right there.
Yeah, because I watched this video 1,000 times because it's incredible, and it's not easy to see that part really clearly with the cameras. Thank you for sharing on YouTube all that videos from the Fates Warning tours.
Yeah, there's I think the 11th hour is there too, like that one that's a really up close like I'm wearing like a blue shirt, the 11th hour is there too. I'm pretty sure you can see that pattern plain as day. So you should be able to find it on YouTube somewhere. Just put in the 11th hour and it should come up. You should be able to find it.
Yeah. Ok, ma che lo leggo io il prossimo, da?
Sì, io volevo fare una domanda a Mark proprio a proposito di questo. Mark, I wanted to ask you something about that tour with the Dream Theater. How was to tour and share the stage with Mike Portnoy? How was your experience?
Oh. Well, let's put it this way. I've had better experiences. We were, as much as Mike and Jim were friends, let's just put it this way. A good friend of mine was guitar tech for the Counting Crows for years. And they had a schedule. We do our sound check at 5:30. We're off the stage at 6 o'clock so the opening band can have a sound check, okay? I don't care if you're hungover. I don't care if you're late. It doesn't matter. We are going to be off the stage at 6 o'clock, regardless. Doesn't matter. We're done. You know, it's up to us to start early and get it done, which made it very comfortable for the opening act to have a sound check and be prepared to play a show. This was not so when we toured with the Dream Theater. There were a lot of shows where it was just like kind of throw the gear up. Okay, we're ready. Let's go. Let's play. So it wasn't the greatest in the world. I mean, I could sit here and lie, you know, like a lot of people in this business do and say, oh, they were great. It was awesome. They're the greatest guys. Everybody's great. Oh my God. You know, he lent me $1,000. He never asked for it back. Everybody's great. I love everybody. But is that real life? No, it's not. It's not the memories I had of what was going on. So there were some difficult moments as far as that goes, and just not getting proper, you know, whether it's the lighting or the sound or the sound check to have proper monitoring. I mean, I'll never forget, you know, one show in Switzerland. It was this big place that looked like a circus. I think it was called Circus, actually. Big place. We finally get up on stage to sound check, and we're basically shut down very quickly. And we go to play the show, and the only thing that's in my monitor, and all drummers will love this, my floor tom and Frank's background vocal. That's it. I'm not hearing anything else. I hear his background vocal, and I hear the floor tom, and Ray's standing there under one little red light. And we're pushed all the way up to the front of the stage. So I understand we're an opening act. I get it. Because we've had opening acts for Fates Warning, and I understand that. But I'm not going to sit here with you and tell you, oh my God, this was a love fest. And oh my God, did we get taken care of unbelievably? No. You know, it was basic rock and roll. And like my good friend Ted Keedick says, you know, rock and roll has no friends. You know, it's true. It's a business. And I get it. And I'm not mad and I'm not upset. But you asked me a question, I'm going to answer it honestly. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, we have dinner every Thursday night together. You know, it's like, it is what it is. It's a business. It's music. It is what it is. And I appreciate it for what it is, but I'm going to answer you honestly, you know, because that's, you know, sometimes that's my downfall of answering honestly, but that's the honest question. You know, that's the honest answer.
We wanted to.
But you know, I'll have to say, the best touring that Fates Warning ever did was when Eye to Eye broke, and that record was doing really well, and we were playing with Savatage. We were playing like nice places in America. It's a little different in Europe. You know, if you're doing well in America, it means a lot more because it's a lot harder here. I mean, we're playing places, really nice places, selling them out. And it was, as I remember, that is really, really smooth and good. We were doing that kind of, you headline one night, we headline, so it was a little bit more compatible, and everybody was a little more cooperative with each other. But I remember that. That was great when I was hitting. It was on the radio. There's nothing better than playing a live gig where you look out and the audience is singing your song because they got it from the radio. You know, it's pretty good.
Very good. Legito la prossima, Amy.
Yeah, okay. Just few seconds to translate. Okay. This guy, Alessio, said that you are his favorite drummers, and he would like to know if you have a progressive metal album or band you are working with, or which are your future projects in music business.
What I've got going now is Spirits of Fire is doing another record with Chris Caffrey and Steve DiGiorgio. I am actually working with Gary Werkamp from the band Shadow Gallery again, and we're going to do another record together. Like I said, I'm doing the next Graham Bonnet record that is on. It's on Frontiers Records. I'm kind of in the middle of that, and then I have the project with my European guys. I'm not sure what we're calling the band at the time, but we're about 8 or 9 songs in. So we're, it's not something that just started. We've been working this for like 5 or 6 months. I'm very excited about that. That's about it as far as like major releases go. I do a lot of work where people send me tracks and I record them here for them. Some people, put the stuff out. Some people it's just for their own personal good. But, I do a lot of quote session work, I guess you could say. But, the Spirits of Fire record and the Graham Bonnet record, as well as, the stuff I'm doing with Vivian and stuff, my little progressive commercial hard rock, call it whatever you want. But, yeah, that's about what's going on right now. I'm always open. I put myself in a situation where I have, all the time that I need. So I'm always, looking and open for situations, to be involved in. Very truthfully, it's got to be one of 2 things. It's got to be, it's got to be really good money, or it's got to be music that I love, and it's funny because Warlord kind of fell under that one. We weren't making money, but I loved that band, and, I'd go anywhere. I went to Crete for a one-off in 112-degree weather. But I wasn't going to miss that for the world. You know what I mean? So certain bands you love, and you'll do anything for. And then there's other things that you got to make a living. You got to make a living. There's no way around it.
Ok, Dave, vai tu con la domanda di Stefano Bonelli?
Sì, okay.
Okay.
Stefano says, I have the Warlord recordings, and I would like one day they can come back with Mark behind the drum kit. He loves your drumming, and he thinks it's very good because you mix jazz and metal. And ok, dai un attimo il tempo.
Sì. Take your time, read and translate.
Okay. So basically, it's more difficult to find something good now about the music, the modern music, and he thinks it's simple to take some inspiration from the old recordings instead of the new one.
I take inspiration from myself, and I'm always striving to get better. That doesn't mean faster or stronger, but creatively. My biggest joy one of my biggest joys in life is recording something and then sitting back and listening to it and go, oh yeah, that's something. That's really nasty. That's like, okay, anybody who listens to that's going to go, wow, man, this guy really knows what the hell he's doing. So that's where my inspiration comes from. And I'm sure, as drummers, you guys know, kind of the more you progress, the more you realize that I really don't know anything, and there's just so much to where to go. So as every day goes by, it's even more inspiring because I can do this. Oh, I can do that. Well, why don't I put 2 hits on the bell here instead of 1? And I'll try this and I'll try that. And I'll try to syncopate this. But, so it's endless. It's like this puzzle or thing that you just keep pulling on. And it's very satisfying for me. The inspiration comes from me. I'm to that age where I'm not going back to listen to records and get inspired. It's kind of what I hear up here, I kind of try to put out here. How to do it that way. So my inspiration comes from that. But I can guarantee you this: you're not going to see a Warlord show without me playing the drums. Number one, that's for sure. There's not going to be Warlord with some other guy back there. Problem with Warlord right now is Bill's health isn't the greatest, and he's fine, but he's just not in that position. Well, no one is right now because of COVID, but he's just not in that position to be traveling around. Because as you guys know, being on the road's not easy. And especially when you're in a situation where there's not a lot of money, it's not easy. You kind of have to get that 18-year-old attitude and, I'll just be in the back of the van. And if we only eat once today, it's okay. So it's tough. It's really tough for us to play. I'm not saying that's never going to happen, but, Bill's not ready to run out the door like I am. So, I'm ready to go play tonight if we could, but he's just in a little bit different situation, and I have to respect that. So that's kind of where the truth is.
Okay, let's go with another question from our friend Francesco. He wrote, Queensryche, Fates Warning, Dream Theater, 3 of the most important progressive band in the world. What do you think about the worldwide success of Dream Theater? Do you think that is so deserved?
Well, anything in this, like I said, in this business, my attitude is if you can make money and be successful, I have to take my hat off to you. Motley Crue. Do I own a record? No. Have I ever listened to a song? No. Do I respect the band of getting to where they got? Yes. Do I endorse how they got there? It's not for me to say. But the same thing like with a band like Metallica. Okay, not my favorite band. Don't own the records. Don't play the songs. Don't really care. But when you're successful, you have my respect. Because you got there. You did whatever you had to do to get there. And it's kind of the same with Dream Theater. I don't sit around and listen to the records. I'm not a big sit around and listen to records kind of person. Same thing with Queensryche. That package should have happened 12 or 15 years earlier than when it did. It should have happened, more in the 90s than it did later on, as far as it could have been like really big. Now it almost turned into, when that tour happened, it was almost kind of I don't want to say oldies but goodies, but everybody was kind of past, that period. You know what I mean? There was a certain period when it was a little bit more happening. It was great. That was what everybody wanted to see. And it was great that it could finally be happening. It was just a little late for me. It was just a little kind of after the fact, but anybody that's successful in this music business, I don't care if it's Taylor Swift or, Miley Cyrus or whatever. I might not like what you do, but success is success, and you have. I'll give you the respect for that. So.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Next question comes from our friend Claudio, who asks you if you ever played with the traditional grip, and if you can tell him some exercises to improve the volume in the metal songs using the traditional grip.
Well, yeah, I've been asked that one a lot. It's just a lot of practice. And besides the practice, I was just kind of taught the right way. And the guy that I really looked at and really studied and who he should go study is go watch Steve Smith. Not so much now, but when he was playing with Journey, when he was, when he had the long hair, when he had that rock attitude, when he was laying it down. The jazz stuff is cool. And I know he studied with Freddie Gruber. He changed everything around, and that's great, and that's cool. But for that, getting the you know, you want to get the stick kind of back. Where are we going here? Okay, back here, not up in here. This isn't going to do you any good. You know, I mean, it's cute for jazz maybe or whatever, but there's a spot where it just feels natural to me where you get all that volume and you get all the leverage of the stick. So it's kind of like back in here, if that helps. But it's just really practicing. That whole thing is kind of like a physical exercise, like an athlete would do. You know, you have to do it over and over. Don't do it to the point where you're hurting yourself, but you do it like you're working out. You take it to a certain point where you've exercised the muscles, and the muscles will get stronger. And there's a little bit of an attitude to that too, of when you're playing. You know, you got to be back on the stick, because if you're not back, you're not going to be able to really get, you know, the punch that you need for the music that you're talking about. So you have to kind of get back on the stick. Bye, Lise.
Bello della Diretta.
Away from the dog, so.
Hi.
Say hello to Italy.
Hi.
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 I'll talk to you in a bit.
Okay.
But yeah, you have to be on the back of the stick, and you have to be in the rim. You know, that's like you can kind of see, you know, on the sticks. You know, I've posted a couple times. It's right in that rim, and it's getting the most out of the drum, trying to get the most out of your hand. It's not for everybody, you know, and I'm not trying to speak, quote, you know, people that have passed away, but as great as Neil Peart was, his left hand, truthfully, wasn't like great. Look at Vinnie Colaiuta, you know what I mean? There's a left hand. You know, look at Gadd when he plays traditional grip. There's a left hand. I mean, Ainsley Dunbar, same thing. You know, when I used to go see him play, I mean, it was all the volume, all the strength. It's just guys that really requires a lot of time. Match grip, not so much, because you're kind of used to grabbing things and playing match grip. But that traditional left hand and really getting that pop and power and the drive into it, it's a lot of work. It's just, truthfully, it's not for everybody. You know, it's just sometimes it just doesn't work, you know, for people. And there's not, put it this way, and the truth be told, it's not any better or any worse. You know what I mean? It's not. You know, whatever you can get out of the drums, however you can get it out, is what's more important. It's not like, well, it looks cool because it's traditional grip, but you know, I mean, I play it because I like the way it feels. I can play more 16th and 32nd notes, like on a hi-hat that way, because I have so much more years of experience. I mean, I can play traditional or match grip and play 30 seconds, but they're kind of not so hot. So I go to that all the time, and I'd rather play that way because it just feels natural to me. And I'm sure you guys know as drummers, like when you're playing, you get to a certain spot and it just feels good. It feels right. It feels natural. It's not forced, and it's just easy. And that's what it is for me. And that's why I always go back to it, you know, and that's just the way that I play.
Okay.
Vai.
So,
Vai tu?
another question from Marcello. I would like to tell you that Marcello is a big fan of your drumming,
Okay.
as me and David. So that's why he's writing lots of questions. So he wrote, 30 years ago, Fates Warning, Dream Theater, and Queen's Right to put out monumental album, every three with a personal vision of prog intentions. Is much more than normal songs. They are masterpieces. But in every genre, the bands put out great album. He's talking about the past. In your opinion, the music industry fault, or maybe is internet the problem? A lot of all with a simple click. What was your secret for create these albums? I don't think need only talent. Okay, I think he would like to ask your opinion about how the music goes down.
I understand what he's saying.
Okay.
There's a couple things. There's really no record labels. You know, there's very few record labels. It's very hard pressed to expect musicians to create records, spend money out of their own pocket, sacrifice by maybe living in not such a nice area, maybe driving not such a nice car because they don't have the money because they have to spend the time to create the records, okay? Records don't get created between 8 o'clock at night and 10 o'clock at night 3 days a week, okay? If you want quality, you got to spend the time. It's that simple. And there are people that are in the position that can spend the time and have provided for themselves other ways financially. But for a musician that relies on playing his guitar, let's say, to make money, you know, and he needs to eat, well, he's going to take that gig every night where he goes down to the bar and he plays the, you know, plays Stevie Ray Vaughan covers, let's just say, to make money, okay? That's not helping his original music, and that's not helping original music for society, okay? Back in the day of when all those records were coming out and they were so great, and every band, like I said, I go back to that chart that shows 1976, you know, 100 records that came out were so different. I mean, it was Steely Dan with a hit record, with Stevie Wonder, with Steve Miller, with Aerosmith coming out with 2 records, with AC/DC coming out with a record, Rush came out with the live album. I mean, the variety was there. I really think, in my own opinion, is the internet killed everything. Say whatever you want about Lars and his drumming. He was dead on with that, and the way all of a sudden music was for free. It's like, well, wait a minute. You know, the only thing I think that kind of saved the movie business from the exact same thing was they figured out a way that you can't copy a movie. You know, you can't, like, we can, I mean, the way the digital age went, you can just copy everything, you know, and have it exactly the way it was. I have no problem back in the day of someone who got a record, made a copy on a cassette, and gave it to a friend, okay? That didn't bother me so much because someone bought the record in the first place. Plus, the cassette's not going to sound as good as the record anyways. But this day and age, when you can take stuff and make it sound, it's exact. It's going to be exact. The fact that, you know, you hear these stories of a guy like Peter Frampton. And I remember seeing Peter Frampton at the Oakland Coliseum, 70,000 people. Here's a guy that, until Michael Jackson came along, had the largest selling record of all time. You know, Frampton Comes Alive was 12 million or whatever it was. And he talks about how he has like 500,000 or 1 million or 5 million streams off Spotify and got a check for $1,700. You know, he said he went to Congress, which is our government here, and they were appalled that he made that little money. So you've basically taken an industry, and the labels kind of did it to themselves because they cut the deals with Spotify and all these different places saying, oh, we're going to turn over, you know, you can have the rights, because when you sign a record contract, unless you're Prince, you know, or Michael Jackson or Paul McCartney, you're pretty much at the mercy of the record label. You know, there's not a lot of midline bands that are successful that are going to say, no, we don't want your deal. I don't like those terms. We'll do it ourselves. You know, very few artists have the ability to really be able to do that. So you're kind of at the mercy of the record company. So, and I'm going to be running up against the situation real soon. And it's going to be like, okay, well, you kind of got to have to go into it with the thought of, I love this record. I did the best I can. Hopefully the record company can do something with it. You know, hopefully I can do whatever I can to promote it. But me sitting on my Facebook page, or me even hiring a company to do this whole social media routine, that's not going to get you where you really want to get. You know, and the big joke, you know, let's pretend there's no COVID, because that's a whole different thing. Let's just say we're back in normal times. You know, the big joke that all these supposed music industry experts say is, well, you know, you got to go out and play. Okay, well, I get that, but you go out and play, and number one, a club wants to charge you to play. Or number two, why in God's name is the club going to pay you to play when no one's going to come see you, because no one knows who you are, because you don't have a record out that a radio station's not playing? It's like it's a catch-22. Yeah, I would love to go play, but I'm not going to go down to the bar and play in front of 6 people so this guy can sell like 9 beers or something. It's a waste of time. So the whole industry is completely, you know, bass backwards. You know, it used to, it's so funny. And the big joke is, you know, every 2 years it's different. 2 years ago, it's, oh, no, do recordings because records are selling again. And then 2 years later, oh, no one's buying records. It's all about touring. And then 2 years later, it's like, okay, the touring's down. So now we're going to go back. Now everybody make records. And it's kind of like the business has just kind of shot itself in the foot. And I really don't think there is much of a business. And this whole do-it-yourself routine, it's so killed the music business that I could literally get my dog in here and stick a microphone and have him bark a few times and come up with some cute-ass video on YouTube, and he could be more successful than I am in the matter of a month. And I spent my whole life doing this. So the whole business part of it and the whole internet, you know, I think there is a major problem that anybody can, quote, do a record, and it floods the market. So all of a sudden, when you go out, it's not like, okay, am I going to get the Pepsi or am I going to buy the Coke? There's Pepsi, Coke, there's A, B, C, D. Oh, there's a little company in New Zealand that made some, okay. And there's too many choices. There's just too much flooding the market. There's only X amount of dollars to spend that people are going to spend on music. And it turns into this dilution. Now, when everybody's giving all their stuff away free, why are you giving it away for free? It's either one, has no value, so no one wants to pay for it, or two, you think by giving it away for free, you're going to get discovered. Like I said, I'm glad I'm not 25 years old right now and trying to be a musician. You know, I'm very happy about my old age. It doesn't bother me a bit because I turn around and I see, you know, what's happening and how things are going and just what it is. And I'm just thinking, you know, there would be no Warlord. There would be no Fates Warning. There would be no, you know, Queensryche or whoever, those bands, if it was today's time, because you'd never be able to get them off the ground. You know, no one would want to take a chance on them. I mean, back then there was like, remember the phrase independent labels? You know, independent label. They would try to develop bands. They would try to develop the band and take it on to the next label, like a bigger label. But that's kind of all gone, you know, and especially for hard rock metal guys, it's all about, you know, there's 3 or 4 or 5 labels, maybe, you know, what is there? Frontiers. There's a few others, you know, that do this kind of music. You're kind of at their mercy, and no one's going to get in. No one wants to get into it and say, oh, okay, we're going to give you 3 records. We're going to develop your band, and this is our plan. It's kind of like, okay, well, turn in your record, and we'll see what we can do with it. So it's very discouraging, that the whole music business, as far as it goes right now. So, like I said, I'm glad I'm not 25.
Very good. Ok. La guido la prossima?
Vai.
Ok. Giordano has one comment and one question. Okay. I read the comment first. I find your advice is clear, direct, straight to the point, and practical, illuminating. Also loved your honesty on touring with Dream Theater. Great to see people like you so real and honest in this business. Thanks a lot. The question is, what are your favorite drummers or inspiration from the past and from nowadays scene?
Well, nothing today. When I go back to the past, I took a lot from like the Motown drummers just because of like kind of the feel, you know, and I thought it was important for the feel. And I heard that music a lot as a kid, and I still listen to it today. It's not progressive, and you wouldn't listen to these drummers and say, oh my God, they're amazing. But they are amazing because of the groove and the feel and the way they propelled the songs. Like I said, you know, and I've said it forever, you know, Ainsley Dunbar was a huge influence as far as stealing stuff. Dave Garibaldi was a big influence. You know, Steve Smith, when he was playing with Journey, with the whole traditional grip, kind of saying, hey, it's cool to be able to do this in this kind of music. You know, other drummers, I mean, you know, I love what guys like, you know, Weckl do. You know, Vinnie Colaiuta, obviously. You know, there's other guys. There's a lot of guys that just, to me, that there's these great rock drummers, and that's really cool, and everybody knows them, and they're successful, and they're kind of like household names, and they're good. They're good, great. No, not great, but there's a lot of guys that are kind of above that, are just really like, you know, like out there. You know, I mean, Virgil Donati's one. There's just guys that are on a different level. You know, I don't know if you guys ever heard of a drummer named Tommy Igoe. He's a guy from New York, and he's more of a, I think he came up, he did a lot of shows, like Broadway shows, but just an unbelievable player, just total command of the kit and total command of his head and how to play, dynamics, feel, groove, sloppy when you want to be sloppy. Just like great drummers, guys that really took it seriously. So yeah, those are the kind of guys that I like to listen to at times. I don't really do too much stealing these days, because what it is, you know, I know how to read music. I know how music lays out as far as, you know, bars and beats and measures. And I just kind of approach it from a creative point of view. You know, I do a lot of things, and I pay a lot of attention when I record, like how's it going to sound in a mix? Well, why are you hitting that crash cymbal twice when you know it's going to be over there? Why don't you hit that crash cymbal first before you go back to the open hi-hat here? So when the listener's listening, it'll be in the stereo field. You know, I spend a lot of time from the production side of things, you know, and that's another thing that I think, you know, along with the electronics, that kind of separates me or makes me a little different, is that I'm totally into the whole studio side and creating my sound. And I would love to have a guy come in here who can get better and bigger and sounds than me. It's not my ego. It's just that I was tired of doing sessions with guys with the drum sounds. You'd be going, man, that sounds like crap. You know, it's just like, this doesn't sound very good. And so I decided years ago, well, why don't you learn how to get what you want? And I've been fortunate enough to be able to have the equipment and the time and do that. And, you know, have my kit dialed in and just ready to go all the time. And it's important to me what it sounds like, because that's also the representation of who you are. You know, I'm tired of bands, and I'm sure you've heard the interviews. Big bands, big progressive bands, a lot of money, big studios, blah, blah, blah. And the snare sounds like shit. And then the interview, oh, we were experimenting with the snare sound. No, you weren't experimenting. You just couldn't get a good snare sound, is what it is. You didn't know what the hell you were doing. You know, you couldn't get a good snare drum sound. You did not get that god-awful sound because you were experimenting, you know? So the studio side of things, to me, is just as important, because that represents who you are to people. And like you said, and, you know, there's been comments where, you know, you can hear your sound a mile away and so on and so forth, you know, and I like to hope to think that's part of it, because when I'm sitting down and creating parts, I'm thinking of what it's going to sound like to the listener in the stereo speakers, you know? So I'm very aware of that. Also just very aware of the sounds and trying to create the best sound that I possibly can, that myself and other drummers, because your basic music listening audience, if it's not a musician, it's not going to say, wow, that's a great drum sound. But musicians will, and especially drummers will. So I always try to strive for that, and to just really create my own sound and know where I'm going with it.
Okay. So we have another question from Francesco. With Warlord, you have created epic metal. With Fate's Warning, you have changed the rules of progressive metal. Who are your natural successor in the music business nowadays?
Is there one? Is there a band that's come out that's, you know, stood at the time, that's as original as Warlord or Fate's Warning? I mean, can you tell me truthfully that Hammerfall changed the music dynamic like Warlord changed it? I mean, people love them, but I think when Warlord came, you got to remember, when Warlord came out, the bands in LA were Rat, Motley Crue, Faster Pussycat, maybe Great White. But what I'm saying is, it was those LA bands. You know, it was the LA band. We were not an LA band. You know, we were like this European Rainbow style band. And who else was doing it at that time besides Rainbow? maybe Uriah Heep. Okay. There were bands. We were more looking at that in the Scorpions and maybe UFO and Sabbath as compared to being like Motley Crue, those kind of bands. So I really do think, Warlord had such a huge influence and changed the landscape at the time for what was going on, just because it was so original. Bill's writing was just so original and so different, than anything else that was out there. It just had a real big impact. And I don't know, maybe you guys can tell me, but I don't know any bands that have the impact. It also takes, you won't know until time goes by. You need to have, time that goes by. But, I don't know of too many bands that are like, setting the world on fire right now. And it might be that I'm just so old, I'm just stuck in my old ways going, okay, I want to listen to Rainbow. I want to listen to Dio. I want to listen to Coverdale. This is, measure up against that, and then we'll talk, and I don't know if anything really measures up against that. Maybe the stuff in the past was just that good that, what measures up against that? I don't know.
Wow.
And I don't, and the other thing too is I don't think any band that a label puts together, just puts all these different guys together, I think they can make good records, but you're not going to have a history and a past like bands have. There's certain things about a band. You can't have a band where you change singers every record. You can make great records, but you're not going to have that history of a band and the chemistry of everybody together. Like a lot of these bands that are put together, and then next record they have a different drummer, and the next record they have a different singer, and that's just a business. That's business. They're doing records to do business. But as far as those bands that are going to stand the test of time, I don't know anybody. I don't know any of them. Nothing. I don't know. I could be wrong, but nothing strikes me right now going, oh yeah, that band.
Okay. So Mark, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Today, many young drummers works as a studio and live sessions. Do you have some suggestion that you would like to give them?
Sure. Oh, that's a big question. More of a global. You're asking for the old man words of wisdom is what you're asking for. Okay. My first point, and I did it a long time ago. What you need to try to do, and it's not easy, is you need to have multiple streams of income. I've been very, very fortunate that years and years ago, I fell into the rehearsal business, and believe me, I fell into it. I wasn't planning it. Warlord was rehearsing in this little studio. It wasn't even a studio. It was like an abandoned building, I guess you could say. And the band breaks up, and I'm kind of left with the room, because, to play the drums, you need a room. And a friend comes to me. He says, hey, man, I'll give you $20 if my band can rehearse tonight. It went from that to owning a 6,000 square foot building, that I've owned for about 24 years. That has afforded me to be able to play all the time. It's afforded me to say, nah, I don't need to go play in a tribute band to make money. It's afforded me to say, no, I don't really want to record your song because I can't add anything to it. I'm not so desperate. I need to make the money that I'm going to do it. So I've been very fortunate, multiple streams of income. If you have to get a job, that's great. Get a job. Okay. You got to make money. But if you can relate it to the music business, back in the day, what I used to do for Bill Matoyer at Metal Blade Records was do the drum tuning at his recording sessions, because so many of the drummers couldn't tune their drums. So I was making money there. I also worked a couple different jobs doing construction and, early in the morning and, working in an office and doing other things. But if you can make money, doing quote sessions, that's great. I don't want to give away my secrets, but because I'm in a situation where I can give you state-of-the-art album quality sounds, there is an advantage to having Mark record your stuff, because number one, it's going to sound amazing. And number two, you're not going to have to pay that studio cost. Because when you go into a recording studio, number one, it's happening live right there. If the drummer can't get good sounds, or the engineer, or something's broken or whatever, the clock's running, money's burning, and it's tough. You know, that's a pressure situation. Also, when you get done in that studio, you're done. With me, when I record for somebody, if they want to come back a week later or a month later and say, hey man, can you change this fill? Or, hey, we decided to cut the verse down. It's really easy for me to edit that. It's really easy for me to go in and do whatever, because it's my studio and I'm the only one who ever records here. I mean, except when I'm doing a project and, you know, I bring a friend in, or Philip comes in to cut the bass or whatever. But, you know, if you can get to that point where you have your own space to record, you're kind of now in control. You know, you're in control. You don't have to run out to a studio to record for someone. Probably the smartest thing that I ever did over the last 30 to 40 years was always have a place where I could play and record and never have to worry about it. But yeah, anything that you can do in the music business to make money. Obviously, the other thing, I wish I mean, I hope I wouldn't have to say this, but if you're doing anything for somebody else, or even in a band, but even for money, you need to be overly professional. Overly professional. You need to be overly prepared. You need to show up ahead of time, not on time, but ahead of time. You know, just put yourself in the opposite position and pretend you're the employer. You're the guy paying the guy. Well, what do you want the guy to do? Do you want him to show up 5 minutes late? No. Do you want him to show up with his drums that have crappy heads on it that sound horrible? No. It's just business. You have to just be professional, overly prepared, no attitude, no attitude. You can't, if someone's paying you money, you basically have one right. You can say, no, I don't want to do the job. That's it. But when you accept the job, you can't start all of a sudden trying to renegotiate and say, oh no, I'm not going to do that. I know you asked me and I agree, but I'm going to change that. No. Just be professional. That's all it is. It's being professional. Have a smile on your face. Be happy to be there. And if you're not happy to be there, don't be there. That's all I can say. But it's about the relationships that you make with people. Because if you go in and do a session with somebody, and whether you're like Vinnie Colaiuta or not, but you get the job done, it's easy, you're professional, the guy's not stressing who hired you, everything's going good. You don't think he'll call you the next time? Or when a friend of his says, hey man, I got this track I got to do, who can you recommend? It's just all about the relationship that you have with somebody and how they look at you. If you come in and let's just say you play like Weckl, it's like, oh my God, everybody in the control room sitting there going, oh my God, this is incredible. But you're a complete nasty person, I'm not sure if they're going to hire you back no matter how good you play. I have a friend of mine who does a lot of work, and he's a good drummer. He's not a great drummer. He's good. He gets done when he needs to be done. The nicest guy you've ever met, always with a smile on his face, always just that super nice guy, and he's working all the time. Because people, when you're in stressful situations, you're in a studio, you're paying money, you want it to be easy. You don't want the drummer over there freaking out or being an asshole or just being nasty. It's just really about that positive attitude and having the relationships with people, you know, and that's, to me, that's what the music business was supposed to be. You know, it was more that than anything else, because everybody's not the greatest player in the world. And as much as we all strive to be that, we're not. So, well, what are the other things that come along with it? Well, you know, I never give you a problem. I never give you a headache. The worst is being late. I mean, that is the absolute worst. It's like being late when someone's paying by the hour and you show up late. You know, it's totally unacceptable. You know, there was that whole thing of, you know, kind of that sex, drugs, and rock and roll with the whole music business and rock stars, and things were really loosey-goosey, but it's kind of gotten away from that a lot, and it's business. It's more business, you know, today than anything else. So I would say it's just a good attitude, you know, and not to sound like the father figure, but drugs and alcohol have nothing to do with music. You don't need it to be more creative. That's a bunch of crap. It's an excuse. And like I tell my kids, there's never been one success story based on drugs and alcohol. Okay. I could sit here and rattle off 10 names that, you know, killed people easily, you know, with drugs and alcohol. But I haven't heard anybody say, oh, I owe all my success and all my gold and platinum records to drugs and alcohol. Never, never, never. It has nothing to do with the music business. So I know that's kind of a 60s, 70s, 80s thing, but I still see people, you know, today, and I'm just going, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know, so, but that's my words of advice.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so I have just another question for me. Is my last question. Then we have 3 comments from the guys, and then we are finished. So
Okay.
my question is, for me, your drumming is really, really impressive. And I would like to ask you how you think when you have to create a drum part, because I always try to analyze your style, and it's really impressive your style, because your linear drumming, the grooves, the fills are really complex, almost mechanical, but at the same time are really groovy. It's like here a Virgil Donati ultra independence pattern with the smooth groove of Billie Jean. That's what I feel when I hear your drumming.
I think a lot of it, you have to remember within that, you can find the beat, and you can find, as crazy as it is, if you listen long enough, you'll hear the repetition. What completely loses me as a listener is when I listen to a drummer that like every bar or two, it's changing and it's something different and something different. The whole thing about, and it goes back to pop music. The reason pop music is popular is it's repetitive. How many times have you heard a song that you cannot stand? You just want to throw up, but you hear it so many times, you get yourself humming it. It's like, what am I doing? The human body and the human brain, when it hears something over and over and over, it sticks. So within my drumming, I try to make repetitive patterns. You know, that's why a lot of times I'll even try to make a verse pattern tie somehow to a chorus pattern, just so the music listener, and it goes back to orchestration, and it goes back to flow and groove. And I'm not there to impress. I'm there to impress myself, but the backbeat is important. It doesn't have to be on 2 and 4, but it has to be consistent throughout what's happening. And like I said, a lot of what I do is when I come up with certain things, then I start kind of like changing it and tearing it apart. Instead of playing, I do this all the time. If I'm playing, let's just say I'm playing 8th notes on the ride cymbal, simple beat. Then I'll go, okay, how about we do this? Since you have the closed hi-hat right next to the ride, why don't you just alternate that hand back and forth? You know, it's almost an exercise in coordination, but it changes up the groove so differently. It makes it sound so different because you have 2 sound sources going, instead of just ding, 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 it's ding, 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 which again, as much as that sounds simple, it affects everything else. It affects the kick and the snare and everything else that's going on. So a lot of my parts, like I said, I sit down and I come up with something and then I change it around. And then I try different things. And the one thing I've been getting into lately a lot is space and leaving air. Because I love that dynamic thing of when there's nothing going on to all of a sudden something just comes smashing in. It's like if you listen to a song, and I'm sure you've heard it, where the bass player's not playing. And all of a sudden when he comes in, it's like the whole room starts shaking because you got used to listening to the song without it. And now here it comes. He's adding it. Here's the catch-up. And it's like, whoa, it really stands out. So from a drum point of view, I try to do the things where I open up the gap of air, but maybe the accents are kind of cool or different, or a hit off the bell of the cymbal, or just something to pull your ear somewhere. But a lot of it's just trying a million different things. And unfortunate, there are certain times I just kind of go back to the same old thing that's so ingrained in me that I'm trying to expand. I'm trying to get away from it. Sometimes just the good old fashioned simple works really well. So I'm never afraid to just go back and go boom, tap, because if you do that for 4 bars, and then you expand on that and kind of make it a crazy boom tap for the next 4 bars, they tie together as compared to just playing crazy all the time. So you're kind of setting it up. It's a difficult question, but at the same time, it's just kind of letting your mind expand when you're playing. Don't be in a hurry. It's just kind of getting lost in it and listening to what you hear inside. I mean, that's why it works for me, because I hear certain things in my head. I'm that guy who basically, if I'm awake, there's stuff going through my head, whether it's musical, whether it's just boom, tap, boom, tap. I mean, whatever. It's just, there's always a little something. And then sometimes when I sit down and start analyzing different ideas, I put them on the drum set and then just try to expand on them. So that it's more of that.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Wow.
Vai, da. C'è una domanda di Francesco.
Dov'è? Aspetta. Aspetta un secondo. Okay. Francesco asks, do you think that Deliver Us was the first Christian metal album of the history? Do you know an Italian band called Adramelk? In your music, I hear the influences of the Warlords sound.
No, Warlord's not a Christian band. I'm Jewish and Bill is Greek Orthodox, and the band was never anything to do with religion. We were firm believers in music is music, and he was using certain themes, but you know, Lucifer's Hammer is about an atomic bomb. You know, Penny for a Poor Man is about the homeless problem. Mrs. Victoria is just a made-up story like a novel. So as much as Bill used some of the terminology that you might find in the Bible or different religious things, Warlord was not. We were the farthest, not that we were the farthest thing from a religious band, but we were not Tourniquet or any of these, quote, we weren't Striper. You know, it was definitely nothing to do with it. This was just full on, you know, late 70s, early 80s, European, Rainbow, Sabbath, whatever, metal, period. There was no religion at all.
Mm,
Okay.
I'm okay.
So I'm going to read the last comment. It's from Alessandro Pace. He play with the Foreshadowing. He's a famous metal band here in Italy. He wrote, do you agree that modern metal drummers should start being more creative on cymbals? There's too much obsession for fast and elaborate kicks, while the use of cymbals is often banal.
Depends how it's used, but no, I think I know where he's going. I can't stand the overuse of double bass. What people don't realize, and it goes back to when we were talking and I was talking about how I'm into the studio production part of things, and I even knew it a long time ago. When you're playing double bass fast and stuff like that, the amount of noise that you're making and the amount of frequencies in a recording that you're chewing up from the low end to the clicky clacky of the beaters, you're flooding the speakers with a whole lot of noise, and there's no dynamics. You might as well just turn up the low end and have it just buzz for a while, because the very uncreative use of double bass of just flying 100 miles an hour, to me, I don't understand. You know, I don't get it. I've always joked saying, hey, if it looks like you're having a stroke, you know, and having a heart attack while you're playing the drums, you're not doing it the right way. Okay. So when these guys are sitting down, and I've seen the clips and 100 miles an hour, you know, and then usually they're throwing cymbals on top of it, so you're making even more noise. I'm a big cymbal person, obviously. I mean, I technically own one drum set. That's it. You know, I don't need now cymbals. Different story. There's a whole lot of cymbals, but I've always loved cymbals, and I've loved cymbals for the flavor and the polishing of what goes on top of the drums and how it's used. I'm not so sure if drummers need to go use cymbals more. I think they need to lay off the double bass and be a little bit more creative. I spent a lot of time just with 1 foot developing, you know, 3 notes and 4 notes and being able to play a lot of stuff just with 1 foot. No, I can't play 200 beats per minute blast beat like some of these guys can do. I don't see what the point is. I don't get asked to play that a lot. So I don't really, that's not really my repertoire, but I just spend a lot of time, with one foot, whether it's, Leonard Hayes, John Bonham, whoever, guys with one foot that can really, can play. And again, when you play double bass, I kind of lose my hi-hat. And like I said, I'm a big fan of the hi-hat. So the fact that I'm playing double bass, there's a time and a place for me, and it works, and I use it as a weapon, and when it can be used. But I don't like that all the time and just a bunch of noise. I don't like that. It doesn't. Not a lot of groove to it, not a lot of feel to it, not a lot of dynamics to it. But so to answer his question, I'd probably have to say yes. I kind of agree with what he's saying.
Ok. Ragazzi, direi che siamo arrivati alla fine, quindi ringraziamo tutti voi per l'enorme supporto che avete dato a questo Drum Talk. Adesso torno a parlare in inglese, così ringrazio Mark. So, Mark, we would like to thank you so much for this brilliant drum talk. We are honored for this. The podcast of this live stream will be uploaded also on our YouTube channel.
Right.
So
put it up.
Watch again and again and hear all the answers that Mark gave us.
Put it. Yeah. You can post it to mine, or let me know where I can go get it, and I'll post it on all the different places.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. I really appreciate it. You guys were great. I really appreciate the questions.
Yeah. There is a last comment by Luigi. This live is amazing. I see well how Mark loves his job and what he built in his life. I hope to have the same strong in my career.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Some people will take a very big inspiration from this live.
No, yeah, for sure.
If you guys have any questions, feel free to just write me. I'll answer you. Just write me, like you have in the past, and I'll take care of it. I'm good with that. That's good.
You gave us a big lesson in music, in life, and in business. So
okay, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay,
thanks for guys for all the questions, and see you on the next live stream. Now I'm going to close the live stream, but stay with us for a few minutes, Mark, because we have something to say you, okay?
Okay.
Good night, guys. Grazie a tutti.
Ragazzi,
ciao.
Buonanotte.